Gemstone is a brand new product that has its origins in the family tradition of Wilsonart's innovative worktop solutions. Gemstone is a unique surfacing product utilising the latest recycling technology to combine glass, mirror and seashells fused together with epoxy resin, bringing out the hardness of quartz with the elegance of granite. The surface is sealed, making it impervious to dirt and bacteria, an ideal choice for kitchen surfaces. With its unique composite construction, Gemstone can be installed and finished similar to solid worktop surfaces, but with the elegance and durability that is normally reserved for granite and quartz. As well as being highly decorative and hard wearing, Gemstone is renewable. In the unlikely event the surface is scratched, these can normally be removed following the sanding process, a great advantage over granite and quartz. This short film is a simple aid to the installation, finishing and maintenance of Gemstone work surfaces. With its unique composite construction, Gemstone can be installed and finished similar to solid surface worktops, but with the elegance and durability that is normally reserved for granite and quartz. Gemstone, hard as quartz, beautiful as granite. The tools you will need to work with the Gemstone range of products are typical woodworking tools used with solid surfaces, except for the use of polycrystalline diamond-tipped PCD cutters instead of tungsten carbide-tipped TCT cutters. Gemstone should be sanded using a random orbital sander with silica sanding discs. Belt sanders must not be used. Gemstone can be cut using a portable hand circular saw or a hand router. In all cases, PCD tipped cutters and blades must be used. Cut in 3 phases, first cutting 3 to 4 mm, then a further 10 mm and then finally 40 mm. Make the final trim with a router. The jointing of Gemstone is very similar to that of solid surface worktops. Cutting using a router with a PCD cutter is performed by plunging in the usual way. Machining of the worktop to accept connecting bolts and slotting for biscuit joints is also done as usual. If a dry fit leaves a gap, use sandpaper to remove any chipboard ragging, taking care to keep away from the sharp edge. Before applying adhesive to the joints, carefully apply a strip of fibre tape along each edge to be glued, leaving a 2 mm gap. A 2-part seam adhesive is used to join the parts together. The 2-part mix needs to be purged so that the hardener and the resin come through the nozzle at the same rate. The curing time of the adhesive is dependent upon ambient temperature. but will normally be set in about 10 to 20 minutes. Failure to clean the joint might result in an unsightly brown line appearing in the finished joint. Carefully clean all of the surfaces to be joined using denatured alcohol. Apply the adhesive in a long bead to all surfaces, into any biscuit joints, and also making sure that the bead of adhesive runs down into the joint. Push together and check for a good squeeze out to help create a discrete joint. The fibre tape that was applied will create a small fillet of adhesive that can easily be removed when the joint is dry. Check that the joint is flat and that there are no raised sections by feeling the joint. If the joint requires levelling, use a rubber face mallet to lower or raise the work surface as needed. When flat, tighten the jointing bolts and remove the fibre tape. Wait for the joint to dry. Don't be tempted to wipe away any further excess adhesive. When the new joint is completely dry, the small bead of excess adhesive is removed by sanding with the orbital sander, going up through the grits, starting at 150, then 180, then 240, moving on to 400 and finally finishing with a 600 grit. To complete the installation, all work surfaces have to be thoroughly cleaned with denatured alcohol, left to dry, and 2 coats of sealant applied to the surface, buffing between coats. In some instances, you'll need to apply an end cap. There are 2 methods to do this. One is a plant-on method, and the other is an undermount method. The plant-on method involves bonding a piece of 6mm material to the end of the worktop. The method requires a clean sharp edge in order to bond the 6mm material to. Cut a straight edge with a router and a guide strip. De-rag and clean with denatured alcohol after cutting. Remember to prepare the adhesive gun, purging it and replacing the nozzle. Apply adhesive to all surfaces. The end cap is then offered up, ensuring that an adequate amount of squeeze out occurs. Secure in place using 3-way clamps and/or fibre tape. Undermounting requires cutting a rebate to accept the 6mm thick end cap material. Using a router and a straight edge, plunge in 3 steps. The exposed material must be completely free of any chipboard residue in order to avoid unsightly brown residue lines in the finished piece. Adhesive is now applied. Squeeze out occurs. It is secured into position with clamps and/or fibre tape as before. When the end cap joints are finished, they will look like this. The finishing of both edge methods is almost identical and starts with the use of a trimmer to remove excess material. For the undermount method, use a bottom bearing trimmer so that it runs along the edge of the material, keeping a nice clean line to the edging. Use of a 3mm roundover bit to return the factory edge finish on both top and bottom as applicable. Use the random orbital sander going up through the grits. Keep the sander flat, minimising the amount of rounding over the edges. The creation of curved corners on breakfast bars and worktops is easily achieved with the factory supplied curved edging. Let's see how it's done. You will need a jig and a router with a 30mm bush guide and a 25mm PCD cutter. Position the jig on top of the worktop, aligned with the front edge and 15mm in from the side. Cut into the worktop with a full height cut to avoid stepping in the joint. Set the router to a 2 to 3mm depth and follow the full curve and length of the jig. Then plunge in increments of 12mm until the full cut is complete. De-rag the cut edge and dry fit the curved edging strip to make sure of a good tight fit. Clean all surfaces with denatured alcohol. Apply adhesive to the joint and clamp or secure with fibre tape and then leave to dry. Finishing is firstly achieved by trimming, then using the 3mm roundover bit to restore the factory edge on the top, bottom and sides as needed. Finally finish with the random orbital sander going up through the grits. Position the jig onto the worktop, similar to the single curve, and follow the same procedure to remove the first curve. The second curve requires the worktop to be turned over, face down, align the front edges of the jig with the cut edge and clamp. This allows the router blade to cut into the front edge. Following the same cutting process as before to create the second curve. Once cut, de-rag, dry fit and check for a really good tight fit. Clean the surfaces with denatured alcohol, then glue and clamp or tape as before. Finally, trim excess material, round over any edges and finish as before with the random orbital sander. Then clean and seal. For a drop-in sink, position in the desired place and mark around the outside of the sink. Measure and mark out an 8mm internal cut line. This step will provide the lip for the sink to sit on. Using a 12mm HSS drill bit, to add a radius to the inside corners to stop any possibility of stress fractures occurring. Using a drop saw or router with a PCD tipped cutter, machine the worktop to provide the cutout for the drop-in sink. Cut into corners with a down-cutting jigsaw blade. All sink and tap hole cutouts should be sealed with silicone sealant to prevent water ingress getting into the exposed core material. Hob cutouts require protection from heat using a reflective tape around the inside of the cut. The cutout for the undermount sink is achieved using two pre-supplied upper and lower jigs. Align the top jig with the front of the worktop and clamp into position. Centralise the router support base within the jig. It is needed to stop the router from tipping whilst cutting. Secure by drilling at each corner and screwing to the work surface. Using a router, plunge in 3 steps to provide the undermount sink cutout. Round over the cut edge top surface. Finally finish the round over with 240, 400 and 600 grit sandpaper. Drainer grooves should be machined before working on the bottom of the worktop. Clamp the jig in the required position. Plunge using a router set to a maximum depth of 3 mm. Finally finish the grooves with 240, 400 and 600 grit sandpaper. Now using jig number 2, the bottom of the worktop is machined to allow the undermount sink to be installed. Reinsert the piece that was already cut out to act as a router support. Centre the router support and align the jig with the front of the worktop and clamp. The router plunge is set to remove only the chipboard and no more. Dry fit the sink. Position, mark and drill pilot holes for the sink clips. Finally put silicone sealant on the lip and on the chipboard edge, ready to install the sink. Fit and centralise the sink. Fit the sink clips and hand tighten the sink clip bolts. Secure the locking nuts with a spanner. Measure and cut out any tap connector holes and finally finish the worktop surface as before. Upstands and splashbacks are installed by first finishing with a random orbital sander and a 600 grit disc. Fix to the wall by applying silicone sealant to the back, then a bead of silicone sealant to the back of the worktop. Push back against the wall to position. Any squeeze out can easily be removed. Finally clean and seal as normal. As well as being highly decorative and hard wearing, Gemstone is renewable. In the unlikely event the surface is scratched, These can normally be removed following the sanding process and finishing with cleaner and sealant. Gemstone, a great advantage over granite and quartz.